you believe if I tell you you're probably earning more than you were a year ago? Inflation may be eroding your earnings, but according to the latest BankservAfrica Disposable Salary Index, banked pensions continue to increase at a faster rate than disposable salaries. Pensions increased by 8% from last year. Between the weaker rand, higher interest rates and a stagnant market, the average payout has gone from around 4,750 rand at the end of 2013 to just over 6,200 rand in March 2016. It's an average increase of 1,500 rand per month, just above the total amount that old age pensioners get from government. So South Africans should be feeling pretty optimistic, but we're not. This is the Moneymakers. Tonight I talked to Mike Schussler, the chief economist at economists.co.za, about the numbers, because we should be feeling better off. We're getting above inflation wage increases. Pensioners, certainly private sector pensioners, are probably getting higher payouts. Why are we feeling gloomy?
Well, I think we're feeling gloomy because, first of all, let's just unpack the salaries. There's an unnatural increase in the sense that last year the government negotiations in their bargaining council, which is about 2 million workers if you take it all in, they had a period of 3 months delay in their increase. So now this year the increase is essentially 3 months earlier. So there's actually 2 months worth of increases. And
lies, damn lies and statistics.
Exactly.
Okay.
And that's around 25% of the people in this index are from government. So if they've now got a 7.5 and top of a 7.5 increase plus their 1% annual notch increase. So, ultimately we're looking at a sort of a 17% increase, which then reflects at 7.5 for the whole country.
Generally, though, a lot of people, maybe white-collar workers less so, but certainly blue-collar workers tend through the negotiating process to get above inflation increases.
Yes.
I mean, that's the trend, and that remains intact.
Yes, I think there's a lot of proof in that. There's the Andrew Levy level of agreements that he does. Then you look at the bargaining councils, the ministerial determinations. We don't always realize it, but the bargaining councils cover 2.5 million workers directly who are members of those trade unions. But if you extend it, it's probably around 4.5, 5 million people out of a formal economy of 10 million people. So half of people are in bargaining councils, the ministerial determinations, the retail, the hotel sector, then the sort of parts of the informal like taxis and domestic workers, agriculture and so on are included in that. So, most people at the bottom have seen huge increases. Why are we not picking it up in the salary surveys always? I'm not sure. I'm not going to go into that now. But here's a survey that's got 3 million people per month in it. And it says to you that the median salary is on its way to 10,000. It's not quite there yet, but it's on its way there. The average salary is quite close to 13. In fact, it crossed 13 for about 3 months because of the December bonuses.
Difference between median and average?
Median is the guy in the middle.
Okay.
And average is if I combine everybody and I say, divided by the people, the number of people. And the typically your average is always higher than your median, and salaries by their very nature are unequal, because you've got somebody at the bottom or somebody starting their career and somebody finishing their career get paid very different levels for their responsibility, for the type of work that they do, and so forth. What's interesting here, I think, on another matter is the pension side. And I really find it interesting because this is the only pension index that there is. There's about 645,000 people on it now. And that we think is really 80% of all pensioners in the country, because we know from the FSB there's about 830,000 private pensioners. We're not talking social grants here. No. And it's very interesting that it's continuing to increase at a rate above the inflation. And I looked and I thought, but my pension fund should be going up more or less with the equity markets. And when I listen to your shows and so on, I always think to myself, but this is about my pension too. That's the way it for many people probably as well. It resonates with them. So we want to hear a bit of a company result or whatever, because
completely. But at the same time, companies are seeing profits under a huge amount of pressure. Cost cutting is the word of the day. More people are getting laid off. Our official unemployment number is 26.7%, which by our standards even is high.
Yes.
If you're in a job in South Africa, you should be feeling flush. But we're not, because our incomes are being eroded at a considerably higher rate than the official rate of inflation.
Yes, I think there's a few things. There's the one thing that the inflation doesn't pick up so well is quality. So the used car in inflation, for example, has got older. By the very nature of the way that they measure it. The tomato sauce that's gone from 750 to 700, or the burger from 160.
Or the Cadbury's chocolate slab that went from 100 to 90 to 80, and they think we didn't notice, but we did.
Yes. And then there's other things. You didn't pay for parking in some shopping centres. Now you pay for parking.
Yeah.
Or you didn't pay to use the road. Now you pay to use the road. Inflation doesn't pick up those things. And for example, everybody in Joburg's just got a 10 Rand bin thing that's going to increase, and that's not part of inflation. But that adds money that you have to spend. So yes, there's a lot of things. But at the other end, what we don't always think of as humans anyway, we don't think of the free news we read on our phones. We don't think of the...
There's a data cost.
There's a data cost, but
there's a data cost,
but it's minimal, you know, and essentially, you know, to get the newspaper would have cost you more.
No, fair enough.
And so on. So there are things.
The point is, though, Mike, that I think there's more and more evidence pointing to the fact that if we do get a ratings downgrade Friday next week, we're headed to recession. Gulam Balim at Standard Bank was talking about that just this week, saying the ratings downgrade means immediately, well, in pretty quick order, we go into recession by the third quarter, and we lose 200,000 jobs pretty sharpish as well, simply because the economy will not be able to sustain the downgrade. Are we going that way?
Yeah, I think the first quarter already sounds to me very negative. If I just look at the mining thing, that takes away between 1.4 and 1.5% from GDP. So far, manufacturing's barely positive, adds another 0.1. But again, electricity is negative. Wholesale was a positive surprise, whereas retail was a negative downward surprise. Transport is decimated in the first quarter. It is gone. But somehow we have just finished completing a lot of shopping malls and stuff in the building stats from the first quarter. But I think it's going to, on the balance of evidence that I have at the moment, the first quarter looks like negative. So there's a decline in the first quarter. Yeah. The second quarter could be a bit better because of the holiday shift, the Easter weekend. But I think by the third quarter we're back to where we are in the first quarter, in a sense, in my book. And I have a lot of respect for Gulam. I have a lot of respect for a lot of other economists in this country. And it's becoming very clear that even if we don't get a recession, what the rating agencies also look at, which people have got to realize, is the per capita GDP. And if we're growing at 1.7 to 1.8% our population, and we are not growing our GDP with at least that, we are getting poorer.
Yes.
So people are getting poorer, less people employed, yet the people that get money are, on average, doing better.
And you got a smaller and smaller elite that is,
yes.
And I call the elite anybody who's got a job.
Yes.
Whether you're a domestic worker, whether you're a chief executive, you have an income that is not reliant on the state, and it'll be bigger than a basic income.
Well, I would just refine it a bit. I'd say the formal sector is the elite. Domestic sector is the middle market.
Fair enough.
And the informal sector, the domestics, and you know, and then the others are poor. Subsistence agriculture is often also very poor. But look, I 100% agree, and so on. And then somewhere in between we've got these pensioners. And if I can just finish that, that is an interesting thing, because I think the pension companies, the retirement funds, have invested a lot of our money overseas. So partly why they're doing well is maybe through the Rand's collapse.
Well, thank goodness for the likes of Richemont, well, not Richemont, because Richemont's be going through tough times, but thank goodness for SAB Miller, which is a big part of portfolios, and British American Tobacco, and Anheuser-Busch's listing on the JSE.
And they're allowed to take 25% of their money offshore.
In addition to the Rand
and they've probably got a very much a Rand hedge things, because they saw the Rand and commodity prices. So I think, you know, one sector at least, and although they get paid less than half the average of the salary sector, they tend to have better increases in the last 2-3 years. And I thought the whole time it's the equity markets, but maybe we are misreading the situation. But there's also the Rand collapse may be good for at least a small proportion of South Africans who are on pension.
For a period of time.
For a period of time, because the inflation catches up. Inflation
has to come in and erode all of that.
Yeah.
Give me a sense of the state of the nation 18 months from now. Here we sit in the middle of 2016 as we go through 2017. We hit 2018. Are we better off or are we worse off? The Reserve Bank seems to suggest that it's got a bit of a handle on inflation. The leading indicator recently was showing a little bit of an uptick. There's a desperate green shoots that need watering, but do we have them?
Look, no, I think we will be slightly better off, but I think we haven't reached the bottom yet. So if I can put it this way, if you talked about the leading indicator, coincident indicator, all those things, I think for me the turning point is somewhere in the next 12 months. And we haven't reached that turning point yet. And commodity prices, yes, they came up in the short term, but in the long-term picture, they have got nowhere. They are really still down. Those that have lost 60% have bounced back in the long-term picture with 6%, but for the people on the ground, it looks like a 15% bounce because they're looking at the low point to then, but what they forget is the high point. They are still way above, and that's going to take a long time to feed through. There is no agency, official agency other than Treasury that's got any growth for South Africa of 2.5% or more for the next 5 to 6 years. So it's very clear nobody expects sparks.
The coming together of business, labour and government in this attempt to try and avert the downgrade, and they might be successful next week, but then we look towards December and the likelihood then of a downgrade unless we have some very clear signs that CEOs will release capital from the balance sheets to start investing, that we'll get some decent public works programs going to get people into paid employment, to do some infrastructure work, perhaps. Whatever that takes, is it going to be enough to get things going?
I'm going to be very blunt. It's not going to be enough. Maybe we do need, however, the downgrade to shock us.
Because I read that in the Sunday Times last week, and people shouted at me very loudly.
Well, then they must shout at you. The fact of the matter is we've got a very different economy, and we cannot just rely on the private sector to carry the burden the whole time. Government has come to the party sporadically, but they need to come more. We also need proper leadership. We need to tell people you cannot just destroy stuff. Protesting is fine, and if you destroy stuff, burn schools, burn universities, then the full force of the law must be there, and it must be unequivocal. It must be there. Otherwise, we're losing the plot. Because the economy, if I'm a CEO, I see that as an extra risk. So I'm saying, but I don't want 15% return in South Africa. I want 18 or 20% return in South Africa because of these risks. And if I look at another country, I might only require 12% return. So I'd rather go to the other country because today capital moves. How do we restore
confidence? How do we restore confidence to bring capital back?
Well, proper leadership in government, proper leadership in state-owned enterprises, proper leadership and quality people in the civil service, at least in the top echelons, in the first 3 or 4 rows of the top echelons. We need that, and we've got that in certain departments. If we think of Treasury, I've dealt with people at SARS, I've dealt with excellent people at DTI and Department of Labour, but not always. And sometimes I was with an executive once and he said, why are they sending us a C team, this is years ago, from the DTI? Because we got people who couldn't talk to foreigners, who couldn't even speak economics in English. And it was a tragedy because there were people that were very interested in the country and they got despondent because their questions weren't answered. So sometimes it's just the people, proper people.
Mike Schussler, there we go. Yep, he suggests that maybe we do need the downgrade. Why do we need the downgrade? Well, the downgrade could very well be the bitter pill that the doctor orders, because without a shock to the system, there's not going to be the dramatic wake-up call that perhaps we need as policymakers, certainly in South Africa, to get things moving properly. Thank you to Mike Schussler for coming in, and thank you for watching. Till next time, there'll be more Moneymakers, and hopefully just a little silver lining rather than lots of cloud, because there's a lot of cloud about right now, preparing for a big storm. Till next time, bye-bye.